Welcome to John Marshall High School's Exploring Woodworking training video series. The lathe. The lathe is used to rotate stock for shaping, sanding, or polishing. It is also used as a holding jig for fluting, reeding, and drilling holes. People use this machine when working in shops that manufacture baseball bats, candle holders, furniture, and cabinet work. In very large production lines, automated lathing machines can mass produce large quantities of turned objects in a short time. All pieces made can be identical in shape and size. The hobbyist and home craftsman would rarely use this machine, and due to the cost of the equipment would probably not buy a lathe. The power to the lathe is controlled by a safety switch. On some lathes, the speed is changed by the speed control. The headstock houses the motor, pulleys, and belt. The right side of the stock is fastened to the dead center. The tailstock is adjustable to accommodate various lengths of wood. The tailstock adjustment is tightened with the spindle clamp. The operator is protected from stock and chips flying off by the guard. The cutting hand tool is supported by the tool rest. Safety procedures. When selecting stock for turning, avoid loose knots, checks, cross grain, splintering stock, or improperly glued wood. Next, check the speed of the lathe before mounting the stock onto the machine. The live center is a special tool and must not be dropped or handled roughly. When it is necessary to remove it from the headstock, do so carefully to avoid damaging it. Check to see that the stock is properly centered. Also, check the tailstock to see that it is locked into position, securing the work firmly between the centers. Next, rotate the stock by hand to determine that the stock clears the tool rest. You are about ready to use the lathe. Before using any power equipment, make sure you remove or secure belts, dangly jewelry, ties, and any other items that could cause you injury. Keep yourself safe by avoiding loose clothing when working in the wood shop. If the lathe has a spindle guard like the one pictured here, you must use it. It is required that a face shield be worn when operating the lathe if a spindle guard is not present. Keep the tool rest at the proper height and distance from the work. Rough turning should be done at a slow speed. Avoid heavy cuts. The corners should be knocked off with a machine such as the jointer. Keep your hands off the stock when it is revolving. Periodically check the dead center for heating, lubrication, and adjustments. Tools are not to be left on the bed of the lathe. Tools should also be kept sharp at all times. The tool rest must be removed before sanding the stock. Operating procedures. Spindle turning. Cut the stock to size with an allowance of 1 inch for waist in length and 1/4 of an inch for waist in diameter. Square the ends and find the center of each end by using intersecting diagonal lines. Cut one end on the lines using a back saw to a depth of 1/8 of an inch. Center punch the other end at the center. Carefully remove the live center from the lathe with the drive-out rod. Using a wooden mallet, drive the live center into the wood so that the spurs enter the kerf or the cut made by the saw. Replace the stock and live center into the spindle hole of the headstock. Now turn the lathe by hand and see that the wood turns easily. Then tighten the tailstock sleeve clamp to hold the spindle in position. Caution! Never make the tool rest adjustment while the machine is running. Now you will need to adjust the tool rest so that the tool is cutting 1/8 of an inch above center. Always remove corners from stock that is 2 inches square or larger before inserting the piece into the lathe. Assume a normal standing position when using the lathe with your feet slightly spread apart and one foot slightly ahead of the other. Your weight should be evenly distributed on both feet. Hold the cutting tools firmly. Use proper tools for the job. Grasp the handle of the tool well out toward the end with one hand. With your other hand firmly holding the blade of the tool, rest your fingers on the back of the tool rest. Keep your elbows close to your side. Faceplate turning. In faceplate turning, the stock is mounted on a flat metal plate which is attached to the spindle of the headstock. Bandsaw a disc 1/8 of an inch larger in diameter than the finished dimensions. Select a faceplate smaller than the disc to be turned. If screw holes are not desired on the bottom of the finished product, or if there is a possibility of the turning tool striking the screw, glue quality paper and a block of wood about the size of the faceplate to the base of the work. In gluing, use a piece of quality paper or a piece of butcher paper between the woods to simplify the job of taking them apart later. Paper towel will not work. Screw the faceplate firmly to the base of the stock to be turned. Remove the live center from the lathe and screw the faceplate to the spindle. Adjust the tool rest so the cutting tool is cutting above the center and 1/8 inch away from the stock. Use a slow speed until the stock is round. Be sure to use the correct type of cutting tool for the job to be done. Lathe sanding. Always remember to remove the tool rest for sanding. When spindle sanding, hold one end of a strip of sandpaper with each hand. Sand by pulling the paper towards you against the stock. Be careful not to touch the rotating stock with your hands. When faceplate sanding, hold paper in one hand and sand on the downward motion. Congratulations! You are now ready to take the online safety test for the lathe.